You're tired of studying. You're tired of not being able to do your favorite activities, your hobbies, your sports, because you're constantly studying every single day until midnight, until 1 in the morning. Maybe you actually want to start a business, but with school, you just can't risk failing your year. You've been traumatized since you were little by your mother shouting at you, and now you're too scared to do anything about it. So you study like a good boy, and all those dreams and ambitions just go to waste. Now, I'm not here to tell you to quit school or something like that, but I'm here to tell you how you can fit both your personal activities and school together. And I've made plenty of these sort of videos. If you look at my channel, you'll find them all. And while I usually talk about, for example, studying in school so that you actually save time at home, today I'm actually going to talk about how to actually study the quickest way possible so that it doesn't take you more than 2 hours to actually study something. And trust me, this is probably this is the easiest, the most effective method to actually study that you'll ever find on the internet. Unless there's some sort of magic technique which some guy's gonna try and sell you for like 100 euros. Yeah, it's probably a scam. So the method I'm talking about is the so-called RUR method. Now, RUR is spelled RUWR, and we'll get to what each letter represents. So starting off with the first R, we have read. Now, a lot of people, when they study, they directly underline all of the, let's say, the dark text, like the fab dark text, which is within the textbook, which is in most textbooks, I believe. And although I think that is a pretty good method, before you actually do anything with the textbook, before you start underlining anything, I would suggest that you actually read the paragraph you're underlining first. And this seems very stupid to say, but we aren't taking into account how many people just underline all of the important bits without first reading the paragraph and knowing the context of those words. So the first thing to do is pretty much just to read it very slowly and try to understand everything that's in the paragraph so you understand what the paragraph's actually talking about. And although this may seem a bit stupid, it is actually very effective. Like, for example, I was helping some of my friends who had to recuperate a couple of tests last week to actually go through the year. And I was helping them study. I was helping them repeat the stuff because they were going to do an oral test about it. And by just reading the stuff they were talking about once very slowly, I actually pretty much knew everything they were talking about. I understood everything they were talking about, and I was able to correct them if they said anything wrong. So you already get a clear understanding of what you're talking about. The problem is that you still aren't able to actually remember those concepts on a permanent basis, and you're also not able to repeat them on a permanent basis, which you're going to have to do if you're doing, for example, a schooling system like the Italian one where there are oral tests in it. So Here's where we get to the next stage, the U. The U stands for underline. Now, we've already talked about this before. You just have to underline mostly the fat pieces of the text, the ones written in the dark writing. But having already read the text, you also know if there's anything else to underline, any definition which is important to remember. You've already read the text once, so you know where to find it pretty much. Now, an important question to ask is if it's better to start underlining after you've read a whole, let's say, chapter, a whole paragraph. I'd say you should read each paragraph, and then as soon as you read the paragraph, you start underlining, and then you move on to the next paragraph. That is what I've found to be the most effective method. So, obviously, I know some of you prefer the highlighters, and if you want to use a highlighter, you're more than welcome to. I used to use highlighters when I was in elementary school and middle school as well, but I've kind of found it easier to underline just because it's easy to cancel out if you've made any mistakes, and I'm simplistic. Moving on to the W, because there is a W in this R. W is for write down. Now, it pretty much consists of writing down on your notebook everything that you've underlined and create some sort of, let's say, map where everything is laid out very clearly and it's quite easy to understand. Now, the thing about this is that I'd say it's not obligatory to write it down, because I have done some tests sometimes where I had to write down a lot of stuff where I decided not to write down and to just study and repeat the stuff I had underlined directly from the textbook. And although this may work sometimes, the advantage of writing it down on your notebook is that you come up with, like, I'd say from 2 to maximum 5 pages of notes, and it's a lot easier to go through these notes rather than just to go through, let's say, 20, 30 pages of textbook. So that's the advantage of writing it down. Now, as well, for writing it down, you can use highlighters to make it neat. You can use different colors. You can, let's say, write down all of the important stuff in like a red coloring, so it's easier to find. But if you're more simplistic, you can obviously just write it all in black or dark blue pen, like I do. Finally, we have repeat. Now, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, the best way to actually remember something is to teach it. And when you're repeating, you're pretty much teaching it. You're saying everything you've studied out loud, so the concepts get fixed within your head. And it's pretty easy. You just read a sentence out loud, and then you try to repeat it without rereading it. And that's the best way to memorize. And there will be some times where you just don't feel like repeating the last sentence because you have a sore throat. All that stuff, you procrastinate, but the key, the secret, is to pretty much just repeat as many times as possible until you don't even need to look at the textbook anymore and you pretty much know everything you need to say. That's pretty much all I had for this video. If you want to see more videos like this, you can drop a like, and I appreciate you coming to watch the video. Keep a strong mind and stay like a lion.